Think about the last time someone made you feel small. Maybe it was a word spoken carelessly, a door closed in your face, a system that didn't see you, a relationship where you gave everything and received almost nothing in return. Think about that moment when the anger rose in your chest like a fire and you had a choice: strike back, lash out, or swallow it down and feel it burn you from the inside. Most of us live here, in that gap between injustice and response. We live in a world that is louder every year. Social media turns every disagreement into a war. Offices become battlegrounds of ego. Streets carry tension that one spark could ignite. Countries speak to each other in threats. Even inside our own families, even inside our own minds, we fight. And we are tired. We are tired of conflict that solves nothing. Tired of winning arguments and losing people. Tired of watching those with power crush those without it. Tired of reaching for peace and finding that the world seems to punish gentleness, as if kindness is weakness, as if turning the other cheek is just an invitation to be hit again. So we ask a question that has echoed through human history. Is there another way? Today, I want to tell you about a man who answered that question, not with words, not with theory, but with his entire life. His name was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and the truth is, by almost every early measure, he was not a remarkable person. He was born in 1869 in a small coastal town in western India called Porbandar. He was a shy child, painfully shy. He was afraid of the dark. He was afraid of thieves. He was afraid of snakes. He was not a natural leader. He was not a great speaker. In school, he was average at best. When he went to London to study law, he struggled. He was awkward at dinner parties. He didn't know which fork to use. He tried to become an English gentleman. He took dancing lessons, learned violin, bought fine clothes, and failed at all of it. He returned to India and tried to start a law practice. He was so nervous speaking in court that his legs shook, his voice disappeared, and he sat back down in humiliation, unable to say a single word. This is the man who would one day bring the most powerful empire in human history to its knees. Let that sit with you for a moment. Because the gap between who Gandhi was and who Gandhi became is not a miracle. It is a lesson. It is the most important lesson of his life. That transformation is not about talent. It is about principles chosen, practiced, and refused to be abandoned even when everything screams at you to let go. In 1893, at age 23, Gandhi traveled to South Africa to work on a legal case. He bought a first-class train ticket because he was a lawyer, a British subject, a professional man. On the train to Pretoria, a white passenger complained about his presence. The conductor told Gandhi to move to the third-class carriage. Gandhi refused. He had a valid first-class ticket. So they threw him off the train. In the freezing cold of a South African night, sitting on a station platform in a town called Pietermaritzburg, Gandhi made a decision. He could go home. He could accept the humiliation as the price of survival, or he could stay and fight. But how to fight, that was the question. He had seen what violent resistance produced: more violence, more repression, more death. He had read the Bhagavad Gita, the Sermon on the Mount, the writings of Tolstoy. He had wrestled with an idea that was so strange it seemed almost foolish. What if the most powerful weapon against injustice was the refusal to become unjust yourself? What if the way to defeat an oppressor was not to out-hate them, but to out-love them? Not to out-fight them, but to out-suffer them, to absorb their violence without breaking, without becoming them, until the watching world could no longer pretend not to see the truth. He called this satyagraha, from the Sanskrit word satya, meaning truth, and agraha, meaning firmness. Truth force, soul force, the power of holding to what is right with such complete commitment that even violence cannot move you. Gandhi did not just preach nonviolence. He built a philosophy around it, a complete way of life, tested every day in the most brutal conditions imaginable. The first principle, ahimsa, nonviolence. Ahimsa means not harming any living being in any way through action, word, or thought. But Gandhi took it further than most people realize. Ahimsa was not passivity. It was not weakness. It was, in his words, the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. True nonviolence requires extraordinary courage, the courage to stand in front of hatred and not flinch, to absorb a blow and respond with dignity. He said, "Nonviolence is not a garment to be put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being." The second principle, truth, satya. Gandhi believed that you cannot fight for justice with deception. If your cause is right, the truth is your most powerful ally. Every lie you tell weakens your position, not because it might be discovered, but because it corrupts you. He called his autobiography the story of my experiments with truth, not triumphs, not victories, experiments. He was always testing, always questioning himself. The third principle, self-discipline, brahmacharya. Gandhi understood that the person who cannot govern themselves cannot govern a movement. He fasted regularly, not just as political protest, but as practice. He spun his own cloth. He cleaned his own latrine. He believed that simplicity was not sacrifice but freedom, that every unnecessary desire you carry is a chain. The fourth principle, fearlessness. The enemy is fear, he said. We think it is hate, but it is fear. Gandhi spent years dismantling his own fear of discomfort, of prison, of death, until there was nothing left for oppression to grip. A person who is not afraid cannot be controlled. But we must not make Gandhi into a saint. He was not. He made mistakes, some small, some profound. He struggled deeply in his relationships. His marriage to Kasturba was marked by tension, control, and moments of genuine cruelty that he later confessed to with enormous regret. He admitted he imposed his experiments on his family without their full consent. He was a flawed father. He held views early in his life about race that he later abandoned, but that we cannot simply erase. He also failed politically many times. His first major campaign in South Africa ended in a compromise that left many Indians still vulnerable. His early campaigns in India were called off when violence broke out, infuriating his followers who felt betrayed. He was arrested, imprisoned, ridiculed. The British press mocked him. His own people sometimes doubted him. In 1919, after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, when British soldiers opened fire on an unarmed crowd in Amritsar, killing hundreds of men, women, and children, Gandhi was shattered. The temptation toward violence had never been stronger. The rage across India was volcanic. He did not give in to it. And that restraint, that terrible, costly restraint, is what built the moral authority that no army could destroy. Because here is what Gandhi understood that most people miss. A movement that responds to violence with violence gives its oppressor exactly what it needs. The British Empire could defeat an armed rebellion. It could not defeat a people who simply refused, who stopped buying British cloth, stopped working British railways, stopped cooperating with British courts, and who absorbed every blow with their heads held high. In 1930, Gandhi did something that the entire world thought was absurd. He announced that he was going to walk 240 miles to the sea to make salt. Salt, a mineral. The British had made it illegal for Indians to produce their own salt, a cruel tax on the most basic human necessity. Gandhi said, "We will simply walk to the ocean, pick up the salt the sea leaves on the shore, and make it ourselves." The world laughed. Then 78 people began walking. Then thousands lined the roads. Then tens of thousands followed in solidarity across the country. When Gandhi reached the sea, bent down, picked up a handful of salt-crusted mud, and held it up, an empire trembled. Not because of salt, because of what it represented. The moment when a people who had been told they were powerless looked at their oppressor and said, clearly, calmly, without hatred, "No, we do not accept this. We are not afraid of you." 17 years later, in 1947, India was free. Gandhi was assassinated on January 30, 1948, shot 3 times at close range as he walked to an evening prayer meeting. He was 78 years old. His last words as he fell were, "Hey Ram, O God." His killer was a Hindu nationalist who believed Gandhi had been too soft, too conciliatory toward Muslims, too committed to unity over victory. And so the man who had given his life to nonviolence was killed by violence. Some see this as the ultimate proof that his philosophy failed, that in the end, the bullet wins. But look at what Gandhi left behind. He had inspired Martin Luther King Jr., who used his exact methods to dismantle segregation in America. He had inspired Nelson Mandela, who held his movement together through 27 years of imprisonment. He had inspired Aung San Suu Kyi, Cesar Chavez, Desmond Tutu, a whole lineage of people across every continent who looked at the impossible and said, "Truth force is real." Albert Einstein, writing after Gandhi's death, said, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth." And perhaps most powerfully, India, the country Gandhi gave his life for, did not disappear when he died. It survived. It grew. Because the principles he had seeded into millions of hearts could not be killed with a bullet. Now I want to speak directly to you. You are not fighting a colonial empire. Your battles are different, but they are real. Maybe you are in a workplace where you are treated as less than you are. Maybe you are in a relationship where your voice has been silenced for so long you've forgotten what it sounds like. Maybe you live in a country or a community that tells you, through 1,000 small signals, that people like you don't matter. Maybe your battle is inside yourself, the war between who you are and who you were told you could be. Gandhi's life is not a history lesson, it is a map. It says, you do not have to become what hurt you. It says, the moment you meet cruelty with cruelty, you have given your oppressor the deepest victory, because you have become them. It says, there is a kind of strength that the world does not prepare you for, because it cannot be taken from you. The strength of a person who knows what they stand for and will not be moved. The strength of someone who can look at hatred and feel sorrow for it rather than mirror it back. Nonviolence is not about being passive. Gandhi was one of the most active people who ever lived. He organized, he marched, he fasted, he negotiated, he wrote, he built. He refused relentlessly to cooperate with injustice. Nonviolence means choosing how you fight. It means refusing to let the fight turn you into something you will be ashamed of later. And simplicity, Gandhi's spinning wheel, his 2 meals a day, his life stripped to essentials, was not poverty. It was clarity. It was the discovery that when you stop chasing what you don't need, you have infinite energy for what actually matters. Gandhi wrote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." You've heard those words so many times they may have lost their weight. Let me give them back to you. He didn't say wait for the change. He didn't say demand the change from someone else. He said, be it, right now, in the small choices of today. Be patient when the world is impatient. Be honest when the world rewards clever lies. Be kind when kindness makes you feel exposed. Stand firm when it would be so much easier to collapse. One person, one shy, ordinary, frightened person who was afraid of the dark, held to these principles long enough and consistently enough to move 300 million people and reshape the course of history. You do not need to change the world today. You only need to make one choice right now to not become what hurt you, to respond to your hardest moment with your highest self, to pick up, metaphorically, your handful of salt, small, simple, true, and hold it up. That is where every great thing begins. Not in power, not in rage, not in the weapons we carry. In the quiet, unbreakable decision to remain human.